So good morning, afternoon, and evening to all of you, or maybe I should say good day. Just a good day to all of you. Yeah, simply. So it's our honor to have this, online seminar today about, social fairness and, work engagement. We have invited a very influential and very amicable person. I mean, professor from Canada this time. Yeah, his name is Prof.Patrick Charlton. So right after this, I'd like to introduce him briefly and then pass on to him. But okay, this is our series of online seminar, and then we would like to discuss social fairness. And also, the context of, well-being and, social psychology, philosophy. Of course, economics and politics are, come under, our, analytical framework. But we wish to collaborate on how we can learn from each other. And today it's about, Canada's, case. Anyway, okay, so let's officially start our online seminar. And first, I'd like to invite our project leader, Professor Jiro Mizushima, for his opening remark. So, Professor Mizushima, please.
Oh, thank you, Professor Ishido and Professor Charlton. Do you hear me?
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you. Oh, hello. My name is Jiro Mizushima. And I'm a professor at political science at Chiba University, and at the same time, director of the research program of Chiba Studies on Global Fair Society. The central theme is fairness and fair society. How could we realize fair society through collaboration between various kinds of fields? That is the main question we pose. And today, thank you for joining our online seminar. We are very happy that we have an honorable guest from Canada who kindly speak about work engagement and social fairness. And now we have a colleague from also Mexico. So Canada and Mexico, this is truly a Pacific online seminar. I'm looking forward to hearing you from Mexico. And anyway, so our team consists of various kinds of experts, law, philosophy of law, economics, and I'm a political scientist and philosophy of politics and environmental economics. But we are now not so good at business administration, and we are not so good at work engagement. So now, by your lecture, we think we could enrich our knowledge and understanding how to make a fair society through more work and better engagement. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Professor Jiro Mizushima, for your opening remark. So, okay, so let me briefly but officially introduce today's main speaker. Today's main speaker is Professor Patrick Charlton of Algonquin College. He holds his courses, multiple courses. He teaches multiple courses in the Algonquin College, MBA course. And then he also has multiple business experiences in Canada, across North America, across, I don't know, maybe across the globe into the future, right? So we will surely enjoy his lecture today. Yeah, officially it says, the program says you have 40 minutes, but you're gonna be very much innovative and so on. So maybe, 50 minutes, 55 minutes, up to you, please. Okay, so let's clap our hand and then welcome Professor Patrick Charlton for his lecture.
Thank you so much, Professor. Thank you so much for having me this evening. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here with you. and to discuss this topic, social fairness and work engagement in Canada during COVID. And this is from a business lens. I do see some fellow Canadians in the room. Excellent. And guess what? We'll be putting you to work tonight as well. Tonight for us, morning for you, probably good day for another region in the world. So let's get it going. And so again, thanks for having me. So everybody can see my screen, I believe.
Yes.
Good. I'm getting some nods. Now, this is an interactive technology that I actually used with Professor Ishido's class 2 years ago. It's called Mentimeter. I'm going to ask you if you wouldn't mind. I'm going to send you a link in the chat line on the Zoom chat line. You can click on that link and it's going to open up another browser in your computer or on your device, or you can simply go to the website. But if you were born in Japan, try to put your pin where you were born, what region in Japan were you born. And I thought we would just test out the technology with this first activity. So I could see somebody put a dot there for Tokyo. I don't know if there's anybody. Oh, there's 2 there. Yeah, there's 2. I could see 2, 3. So mostly born in this region around Tokyo, I see. Okay. So I thought this is an interactive collaborative tool that I actually started using during the COVID pandemic. So it's definitely topical. And I found it was a way to be able to interact with my students. My students could also send me thumbs ups and hearts, as I'm going along. So feel free to share the love or send me a thumbs up or a question mark if you see that at the bottom of your screen. So I could see someone else was born in the kind of the northern part of the island. Oh, there we go. There's a heart. That makes me feel better about myself. Okay. So there was another spot. There we go. And I have to zoom in. Where were you born, Professor Ishido?
I was born in Niigata Prefecture, as I indicated, in the northern part. Yeah, the blue one.
That's
yeah,
you then.
That one.
That's
Niigata
you.
Prefecture.
Okay. Excellent. So this is kind of, anyways, I have some more interactivity built into the presentation. So don't worry if you didn't have time to get your dot on the map. But I just wanted to demonstrate the technology as well during my presentation. So yes, Professor Ishido did a fantastic job introducing me. I am a teacher at the Algonquin College. I have been recognized at the college for the last 12 years. I've been a professor, mostly in the business management entrepreneurship program. I teach courses like professional selling, retail marketing, business management. When I'm not teaching and or consulting with other businesses, I am enjoying family time. We like to ski. We get a lot of snow here in Canada. So there's a picture of me and the kids. That's a little dated. My kids are much older now, but I look the same. And I like to cook. And I picked up amateur drumming actually 2 years ago during COVID, in the basement, not being able to socialize. So I think I'm getting better. It's been a couple of years of practice. So I look forward to evolving with that. I also completed an MBA at University of Fredericton. I sit on my university's advisory board as well. So that's a newer thing. So, and I do fun stuff like working with Professor Ishido and his students at Chiba University, teaching entrepreneurship whenever we get a chance. So the agenda tonight, or tonight for me to morning for you, is to review just high level social and economic impact of an overview in Canada as it relates to COVID. I want to dig into the Canadian small business and medium-sized business effects of the restrictions. With that, we have some interview findings with local business owners, and they're actually in the room today. So I'm excited to get to put them to work, Michael and Chris. And we're going to look at some Canadian work engagement trends and issues, and we're going to look at some other social impact or social business factors and provide some local context, local from Ottawa, Canada. And then we'll open it up to a Q&A. So I'm going to try to not use all your time, Professor. So I'm hoping to keep everybody awake today. So just a look at the timeline. If we can all reflect back to 2 years, a 2-year span where most of us basically didn't leave the house. I know that was the case for us in Canada. It all started in March. I remember where I was teaching, and the school made their announcement to officially lock down, and everybody rushed to Costco to pick up toilet paper. And the lineups, Costco is a big department store here, or a big warehouse discount store here in Canada. You have Costco's in Japan? Probably not. Oh, you do. You have Costco in Japan. Okay, so so you know what I mean. So it was busy. It was the busiest if I've ever seen the Costco. So this was taken from the Stats Canada report on social and economic impacts during the 2-year period. The significant implications on the lives of Canadians, Canadian businesses, and as well as social and economic factors. The references are at the end of the slide deck, and they've been provided to Professor Ishido to distribute. The above image represents a timeline of the social and economic impacts during this period, and it covers health, safety issues, social cohesion, inflation, supply chain, labor market conditions, and more. But what I thought I would do is just break down the timeline into chunks, just to reflect back on that period, major headlines that evolved over the 2 years. So you know, as I mentioned, March, I remember the day running to Costco. 90% of us were affected, and we had to adopt public health precautions in Canada. So the majority of the population was definitely affected. Our GDP declined 18% from pre-COVID levels. These were, I'll just cherry picking some of the major headlines. Unemployment rate reaches a record high of 13% in May of that same year. And by June 2020, retail sales actually surpassed pre-COVID levels, but I think that was all the toilet paper I bought March when the restrictions went down, and everything else that you were hoarding because everybody was in a bit of big panic. So definitely there were declines in mental health during the year. So it was quite dramatic. 55% reported having excellent or very good mental health compared to 68% just not even a year before. So that's quite a decline in mental health in that first year. So moving on through the timeline, we started to get some pickup on employment. So the cumulative employment loss was 3.1% at that point. So things started to pick up as far as the employment is concerned. Moving into December that year, 43% of Canadians employed still concerned about contracting the COVID-19. So there's a lot of anxiety during this period, if we can all remember, going places, masking, etc. January 21, employment declines by 200,000 people in Canada, and young females particularly affected. When I dug deeper into the research, there's a lot around the fact that kids that were going to elementary schools or even high schools had to take school from home or be homeschooled. So many women took on that role and dropped everything and looked after the family that way, which also affected the employment from that perspective. Moving down the timeline, consumer inflation starts to pick up. So 3% 2021 or April, and then again mental health starts to improve, but still behind those 2019 numbers. So mental health is definitely impacted, and I know many contacts that have been definitely affected more than others. And we'll get to maybe some of those reasons as well from the psychological perspective, the psychologists in the room. Inflation hits 30%, 30-year high in just a year, January 2022. So, moving through the timeline, the report from that I drew this timeline from actually speaks about many of these issues here. So you can see from the word cloud on the upper left, you see that a term called triple protected jobs. I'm going to dive into that definition a bit further in a bit. There's a few that have made it that have done okay, that have done well actually through COVID, and those are the ones that had this triple protected job status. And then at the bottom, you'll see financial uncertainties, competitiveness amongst workers, the frontline contact heavy type employment workers, or workers that work for the employees that involve frontline dealing with people, healthcare, food services. They didn't do as well, or due to subsidies and government help, just didn't want to do that job anymore. And then we have these external factors: health, public safety, the lack of social activity, restrictions on businesses, labor market imbalances. I mean, there's a laundry list of core areas, but for the sake of today's talk, I narrowed it down to ones that I thought were more aligned with social fairness and the idea of work engagement. So these 5 core areas from the report I wanted to dive a little deeper on were the labor market conditions for diverse Canadians. Canada is very, very diverse. We welcome immigration. We need immigration. So this is constantly a concern when it comes to work engagement as well as social fairness. Labor market imbalances. We're going to dig deeper in that. I'm going to bug our guests to help me out with that topic as well. The impact on existing inequalities. End of life for emergency financial supports. Michael, I'm looking at you, so get ready for that one. And then I'll wrap it up, this section anyways, with how will our country compete moving forward? Okay, so looking into the labor market conditions improved for diverse Canadians. Well, that's actually, the headline is positive. They did improve for those working in, for primarily the contact heavy works, type of jobs. So lockdown measures earlier in the pandemic disproportionately impacted these Canadians. This included newcomers, and many Canadians in racialized communities were more likely to work in those frontline jobs, high contact settings. So there's actually a demand that we still have today. And I'm going to bug Chris on that one as well, who runs a few retail businesses. So job recovery strengthened for many diverse groups in the second half of 21. So this is actually, a little bit of a good, it's not all doom and gloom in this presentation. This is a really good point. But I have to highlight it is for those high contact types of positions with these groups. We then go into the labor market imbalances. And now this continues to persist. As you see here, during the 2 years, job vacancy rates actually rose. So there was a major demand, and still is, for many of these sectors, especially the accommodations and food services business, 113%, healthcare up 79%, 62% manufacturing, etc. So it created a big need for workers. So there was no great resignation in Canada. This was a term used, to talking about how, basically employees don't want to work anymore. Well, there was a big demand. There was a big demand for work, and especially in these sectors. So businesses are adjusting their hiring strategies right now. Employers appear to be lowering some educational requirements to attract workers. So 10% of workers who had high school diplomas or less had recently started jobs that typically require university education, up from 4% in pre-COVID. Businesses are adjusting their wage plans. In the 2 years leading up to the November 21st, wages among new hires actually rose 10% compared to 6.4% for established employees. So this is creating a little bit of a friction from a work engagement perspective. If you can imagine a long-term employee, working many years, and a new hire comes in getting a much higher wage as it relates to what they were getting. So again, this is creating that fairness or unfair situation. This leads me to one of our guests that I want to put to work, Chris Castillo, who's attending tonight. Chris is a serial entrepreneur, author, musician, and professor, colleague at Algonquin College with me. He's highly regarded as a small business and entrepreneurship expert. Chris has started operating several businesses in a wide variety of industries, including a restaurant, which he currently runs. And it's called Kochi. You can see the picture up there. Inspired by, it's a Japanese themed restaurant. Actually, Chris was a guest speaker to our Chiba students. I brought Chris in and he spoke about his trip to Japan to help research with his partner for the restaurant. He's owned coffee shops. He has a consultancy business right now, which is international. He runs a repair shop franchise. So when Chris and I were talking, and Chris, I'm going to ask you to jump in a sec, we talked about a few different themes. What was your experience through COVID with regards to, your struggles and challenges? And you had mentioned that you had a drop in people willing to work as you felt that you were competing with, at the time, we had very heavy government subsidies that were being doled out. The money machine was running. Perhaps, Chris, I can ask you maybe to comment on that one quote up there, if you don't mind. Can you elaborate on the what you were going through as far as running your restaurant and having no problems getting high quality staff and keeping them, to getting to a situation where you feel like you're competing with government subsidies? Can you kind of give us just give us an explanation around your experience there?
Sure, for sure. Thank you, Patrick. And you can hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you so much.
Okay, great. And thank you, everyone, for having me on the presentation here. It's very nice to meet everybody. And I had a pleasure to go to Japan, and I went with my business partner. His name is Koichi, which means happy one in Japanese. And we went to Japan. We went to Tokyo, then Kyoto, then Hiroshima, and then back into Kyushu Islands. And that's really where my business partner, that's where he learned on the southern side of the islands how to cook ramen. And so he brought the methodology, the idea of creating ramen, and then came to Canada, and then we started up Koichi Ramen, and we sell ramen. And we do really good. And
now, I have to say that his restaurant is so busy that I'm not allowed to go there and take Hikari because it was too busy. I think the night we tried to go when you were visiting, there's lineups out the door. You're a fairly new restaurant in this very established neighborhood, so you're obviously doing something right there. So, Chris, can you now, before we get to the good side, talk to me about the challenges you had again when you were going through that. All of a sudden, you can't hire anybody. What's happening?
For sure. Yeah, for sure. Like, I mean, when COVID-19 hit, it was just like, wow, I can't believe it. it was almost like a movie. It was like a movie, you know, like, because then, you know, I went downtown and everything was closed, and it just felt, you know, really, really bad. So so it was just like shocking. It was definitely hard during COVID for us, and we did of course, you know, have challenges, and but we you know, when you're in a situation like that, you have to be the leader. You have to say, you know, okay, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna do this, and so on. And we just had to take it. We went from having a vision where we want to franchise this, so we want to have this in a variety of cities in Canada and the U.S. To now just surviving what's going to happen tomorrow, what will happen next week. So our mindset kind of changed. And so it was quite difficult. And then on this year, you were telling experienced a drop in the number of people willing to work. Yeah, so like, well, you know, like a lot of people said to me, well, you know, should I go work for you or be at home and receive pay, you know, money from the government, right? It's like, so it was like a no-brainer for a lot of people, right? And this was me in general talking to people, but in for example, the restaurant, we have a really strong culture. And you know, many people ask me, you know, how were you able to survive and so on. And I have to say that we have a really good, strong culture, and we have a very low attrition rate. So we don't go through a lot of turnover, and people really like to work at the restaurant. But yeah, we faced that where people were saying, okay, well, you know, not our employees, but other people were saying I could go work somewhere else. But for our employees, we have, you know, we had 24 there, and throughout the pandemic, and now we have 25. So we actually were able to keep everybody employed. And I just said to the guys, I said, create new food, new dishes, you know, and we're gonna do deep cleaning of the restaurant, and we're gonna, you know, improve on our systems. So so what I try to do is I try to keep everybody employed. Number one, make sure everyone's employed, everyone's working, and we're doing really good. And no one really took the government payment to go and you know, go work there, or maybe work a bit at the restaurant, and then the rest would be subsidized by the government. A lot of people didn't do that, and I think that's you know, that was really good, but it was challenging. We did lose one guy though, and that was due to poaching. So I'm not sure if you guys know poaching, but poaching is, you know, when a company goes into another company and says, hey, come and work for me, I'll pay you more. and so yeah. That's what we were facing. So actually we lost two guys because you know, they enjoy working for us, but right. If someone's offering $2 or $3 more per hour, you know, to work at a restaurant, they're like, okay, well, we're gonna go over here. So we did lose some people to a couple people to that, but the majority of the people, we all kept them all employed, and they were all happy, and we survived.
So Chris, reverse going back though a little bit. I mean, you were open for a couple of years before COVID, or how many years before COVID? 2?
Yeah, it was. So it was.
New.
Yeah, it was fairly new. My partner, him and another fellow, they actually launched a restaurant in 2014, and then I came in 2018, and then we rebranded and took away the old name and new recipe, new everything, and then we took it to the next level, and that was 2018.
So and you've noticed on your strip, very busy. It's actually in Chinatown where you are. You're the only Japanese restaurant style themed restaurant on the street. Have you noticed many restaurants closing over the last 2 years? Okay.
Yeah, and you know, that's really sad. You know, like I mean, yeah, it's really sad because.
But my point is, yours has a lineup out the door. Okay, so you're obviously doing something well with the menu, the culture. Your people are committed through developing that high leadership culture. But from a financial perspective, what I know we've had conversations about this. What did you do different when everything shut down and you weren't allowed to open, what was the difference between you and maybe the other restaurants that shut down? What was that? What were you? How did you set up your business to be able to survive?
Okay, yeah, so that's a very good point. It's very important to try to save money and have it for a rainy day. And COVID-19 hit, and it was quite the rainy day, so we were kind of prepared for that. So we had some money to prepare for that. We didn't really dip into it, but what we did do is we were able to survive. By being a bit more leaner on our operations, and right around the same time, Square, which was started by Jack Dorsey, who started Twitter. Square, they bought out, I think it was Weebly. So when they bought out Weebly, which is a website platform, they allowed the restaurant owners to be able to offer their menu online, right? And there's like when you use Uber or Skip the Dishes or any of those platforms, they're usually taking 25 to 30%, right? I called them up and I tried to negotiate, and I got as low as 18%. So I was able to negotiate, with these guys. But yeah, they're taking 30%. But when I used Square, it was only like 2%. So we were looking at our operation, and we were looking at how we could improve our cost. And then what happened was our suppliers, sorry, they said, you guys on Somerset, you're the only one keeping us in business. Otherwise, we would close. So they would bring us free food, free stuff, and we just said, look, we just want to be able to keep an eye on our supplies, inflation, keep the cost down. And when the government said, okay, no more dining, so that took 80% of our sales away, and just moved everything online. Then when we were like really smart about our costs, that allowed us to be able to survive. But also the staff really came together to be able to help us out as well too, to be able to operate more efficiently and more effectively.
Yeah, that's well said. And I think there's a lot in there that appealed to our economic brains from a lean perspective, having that contingency fund going into the COVID period allowed you to feel a bit more confident with your operations. And I'm sure that as well, from a psychology perspective, social perspective, that kind of led to a more motivated staff. And it's probably something you don't really think about because you just do. You just kind of operate and you don't necessarily reflect on what you're doing. But this is what I'm picking up on anyways, noticing a lot of restaurants have not been able to survive. And ones that have been around longer than you have. So there's that cash management perspective. Even though you didn't have to dip into it, you had it, which helped with building that confidence to continue and get through these really tough times and thrive. So excellent.
Like for example, on the mechanic business, one of our employees said, "Hey, like having people come into the shop, right? It's still enclosed, so we just said, okay, well, outside on the driveway in where we are on Grenfell, why don't we just set up a little drive-through right in the parking lot? So we created a drive-through right in front of our shop, so people drove in, and then they emailed us the payment, and we did cars and fixed right on, and so we didn't actually even use the hoist, right? So it's like a collective effort with the owners and the managers and the employees to come together to try to think how to survive and be able to and do okay, keep the doors open, and even at the mechanic shop we didn't lay off anybody either as well too, and but it was we just working together, and we're just trying to figure out how to make it work.
Chris, thank you so much for bringing that experience and those examples to the conversation. That's fantastic, and I think we got a little bit of a master class on how to run a successful business as well out of it. So thank you, Professor Castillo, for doing that, and I will share Professor Castillo's information too if anybody wants to follow up with him too for his other offerings. But that's excellent. Thank you so much. And I'm going to continue to our next core area, which is going to lead me to Mike soon. But longer lasting impacts of this pandemic on work are likely to exacerbate existing inequalities. But 40% of Canadians hold permanent pandemic resilient jobs. So that's the good, so that's the population that is, the fortunate ones, right? The lucky ones, maybe, but I don't believe in luck. You kind of work for it. I'm going to get to that triple protected definition soon, but these are higher paid, more educated workers that are in that group. So, we're going back again, reflecting on the 2 years. Employment rebounded to pre-COVID levels. So employment has not been an issue in Canada. December 21, accommodation food services remained below pre-pandemic levels, except for the accommodation food services. And that's really due to a lot of places closing down or just ceasing operations. So certain sectors obviously were affected more than others, but overall employment numbers are pretty steady. Now, there was a spike in the technical and scientific services, and that rose by 179,000 new employment opportunities. This is just a graph of the wage decile within that triple protected group. These are the ones that were kind of resilient from the pandemic. So the top, 10%, is earning the most, which is often the case in most wage distribution models. Now, this is again from the Stats Can people, Statistics Canada people. So a triple protected job is one that has no predetermined end date, faces low risk of automation, so it's not affected too much by automation, and is resilient to pandemics. So that's the triple protection. Okay, so a job that's resilient to pandemics is one that meets one of the following conditions. It can be done from home, it involves sufficient physical distancing, and it is deemed essential by authorities. So there's kind of two levels of different groups there, the highest one being the triple protected. 2 in 5 employees aged 18 to 64 held those high protected jobs, those triple protected jobs in 2019. So about 40%, pretty high level for a population. So of this percent of this group, a bit more stats on the earnings between the top and the bottom, as per the chart before. Most of these people surveyed couples, so people that have a partner, and where both spouses or both partners had a post-secondary degree, were 7 times more likely to have, 7 times more likely to both spouses hold triple protected jobs if they both held the degree. So there's a relationship to education and having those jobs. I think as professors, we kind of get that. And that lends well to our profession, right? So that's a good sign. And among couples surveyed, the ones living in larger centers, more populated centers, like urban centers, were the ones that held these jobs. That makes sense. And fewer in the smaller rural communities. So here's just a bit of a snapshot of these folks living in Canada. The majority of these triple protected or double earners fall within the Toronto or the Ontario, the province of Ontario, with Ottawa and Toronto, much higher than perhaps Saskatchewan or East Coast, as well as the Outaouais, which is actually right next to Ottawa. So you can just lump that together, and then Quebec and Montreal. So these are the distribution of that data. So that leads me to the next topic and honing in on Mike here. So financial uncertainties deepen for many businesses as emergency support programs wind down. I didn't ask Chris Castillo if he was part of a loan or grant from that, so maybe we can ask him that afterwards. But share of businesses reporting that absence of government support programs in the next 12 months would have medium to high impact on their business survival. So this is a big stress right now for our businesses that have had support in the last couple of years. And all over the headlines, every day in the paper, is the government's intention to claw back now, to recoup costs. We were throwing money out to everybody, and it wasn't necessarily well organized. So, for example, some people did get money that maybe didn't really qualify, but they just were able to get it. So insolvencies are a concern. They did rise during the later half of the pandemic. It is obviously a concern moving forward. Financial stresses may become even more acute as cost pressures continue to rise. So 43% of businesses expected rising input costs to be an obstacle in the coming months, including manufacturers, and 2/3 of those happen to fall in that food services, accommodation, arts and entertainment, recreation, and manufacturing. So those three industries at the top are the most vulnerable for having to maybe pay up the loans or the grants that they had received, or not grants, but loans from the government. And speaking of arts and entertainment, I'm gonna call out Mike here. Michael is currently an award-winning prof. Hey, we're all award-winning, isn't that cool? We hang out together from Algonquin College. He teaches in the music industry program as well as the business management entrepreneurship program, probably some other ones too. Former touring guitarist, and he was discovered by a very legendary DJ, Casey Kasem, and he's a published author, as well as acts as a chief marketing officer for a local business called Riverwood Acoustics. Really cool company. They actually built speakers from reclaimed wood from the river. Can't wait to get my hands on one of those. I just have to save up. And also runs a consultancy company called Ottawa Consultants. So when I was chatting with you, Mike, we were talking about you were in that entertainment recreation graph, right? With your events company. And Mike ran a very big events company and lost about $3 million, right? Prior to pre-COVID. So that was a big change. And then that launched you into being, an advocate, voice of small businesses throughout Ottawa, Ontario, and Canada. So after government-related shutdowns in the wake of the pandemic, Michael's been very, very active in being a voice for small business owners and expressing those concerns directly to the federal government, provincial, and municipal governments. And I know you continue to work to this day with business owners. So, Mike, thanks for being here. I wanted to just ask you, what's the biggest challenge that you're hearing from your small business owners, medium-sized business owners? What is the biggest challenge? Does it reflect on the kind of the statistics that we were talking about around the concerns of being able to survive?
Sure, and thanks so much for having me here tonight, Pat. And it's great to see everybody. Appreciate the invitation. Right now, so when the pandemic first really started taking hold, the federal government came out with the Canadian Emergency Business Account, or the CEBA loan. And the CEBA loan is not a grant, it's repayable, has to be repaid. And what a lot of small business owners right now, I get messages every day with people asking me what I think is going to happen. And because it's going to be due by the end of this year. So January 31st, people are going to have to pay back somewhere between $20,000 and $40,000 that they borrowed from the federal government. Now, if they pay it back, there is a forgiveness portion. So the government turns a piece of it into a grant. If they don't pay it back, it's going to be a 5% interest on the CEBA loan. So there's a lot of momentum right now trying to work with the federal government here in Canada to extend the deadline again. One of the big small business associations in Canada CFIB, the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, has a petition out right now going to the finance minister and the deputy prime minister. And as it stands right now, I'm scheduling meetings with many ministers, MPs, the leader of the opposition, and potentially the Prime Minister of Canada to have a conversation about it.
And Mike, I mean, it's fantastic, and I always wonder as a business prof, making sure that I am, either in my own business, making driving revenue, making profits, getting in my capitalistic mentality. I'm so inspired by your advocacy for small business owners. This started somewhere. Can you talk to me about when you started to advocate? Was it just an awakening? Did you maybe walk me through your that year when you realized that you have to sell your business? I believe you have to sell the events company.
Right. I did. I chose to sell it because if there was going to be another lockdown, we were going to be in trouble. So I'll just back that up quickly, Patrick, so that the students hear this, because I relay this message to my current students all the time. So in March, first week of March of 2020, I'm in my office, my executive assistant sitting across from me. And I said to her, I think this COVID thing is going to be a big problem. Europe is shutting down, and I was watching the news at night. I was watching Europe go into lockdowns, Italy and so on. And so what I ended up doing was I called a member of the city, the municipal government, city councilor here in the city. And I asked him if the province was going to shut down, if the country was going to shut down. And he said to me, you have to start calling all of the federal and all the provincial government representatives, elected representatives today. And at that point, I said to myself, we are in big trouble. And secondly, I'll just back up one quick second too. So with the event company in Canada, January to April is very, very slow. So we're already burning through capital. We're already, using all efforts to just keep going. And I owned the business for 10 years. So this wasn't anything new, but we had a slow season, and now we were walking into COVID. So what I did, and this is what I tell my students all the time, when I hung up the phone with that elected official, my first thought was, why would they care about me? Why would they care about this one business owner that started calling these elected officials? Why would they want to speak to me? But the one thing is, I did follow his advice, and I made 3 phone calls to 3 elected official offices. And the first call I made, the gentleman answered and he said, well, please send an email. And I really thought at that very moment, you know what, that email is probably going to go into the recycle bin and never be seen again, but I'll do it. And so I sent the email. They called me back 20 minutes later and they said, the minister will meet with you. I was blown away. So the reason I tell this story is that even in anything you do in life, if you don't think it's possible, it's only not possible if you decide not to try. It's only not possible if you don't pick up the phone and make the phone call, send the email, whatever it is. And from there, Patrick and Chris, I know that you guys know this, I met with over 50 elected officials. I was supposed to meet with the Prime Minister on the only date that I couldn't do it. There was a day he said he was available. But I met with all elected officials across all parties. Now, in a situation that was, political and it was a pandemic and so on, I don't choose any sides politically. I needed every single person of every single party to want to meet with me. And so I engaged with all parties. I never, on social media, I was always very careful as to what I posted, because people see it, and it's all about matter of, just being focused.
Focused on the cause. You know what, and it's always inspiring to watch and see you. And I don't know, you're like the Energizer Bunny. I know you have a small kid at home, and a young family, Lots
All
of coffee.
Pat.
Yeah, lots of
All
coffee.
coffee.
Okay, good. And continue to do the hard work, because our small business owners and medium-sized businesses obviously need the support, especially in a country like Canada, where we only have 40 million people. It's not a big country, so our business ecosystem is dominated by oligopolies, big businesses that come in and just buy out other businesses, and then there's no competition left, or very little competition. So it doesn't help our consumers as well from that perspective. So we need small businesses to survive and thrive. Michael, anything else on your mind with regards to other issues, challenges that you're hearing from your small businesses, business contacts, like getting out of COVID, getting back into back to some type of normal? Maybe as it relates to work engagement, is there an issue you're seeing with labor? Are they able to keep their staff, etc.?
Well, the people that I speak with have been able to keep their staff for the most part. People have gone on to new careers because, they weren't sure how long it was actually going to last for. If we do look at challenges that are still very real, inflation right now, the cost of everything going up, the cost of material, if people are purchasing items to, build a product, and supply chain. So I actually work with a company that makes, I have one right here, 1 second, that makes these neoprene suction cups, and they've got a partner with, they partnered with Yeti and so on. And so you can actually put your Yeti inside it and it will suction it to the table. You can hardly get it off. They've been waiting for 10 months to get more neoprene to come in. This is like a material that's very hard to get right now. So, those are the things. If we look at inflation, we look at, just the cost of material, supply chain access, cost of fuel is going up, which means that deliveries are more expensive. If we look at the shipping containers coming to Canada, the cost on shipping containers skyrocketed. So, these are the things that a lot of small businesses are still.
And that, Michael, that echoes Chris's comments as well. And I didn't necessarily vocalize them, but higher sales, less profit, because now you're paying higher wages for the employees you have. You love them, you hug them, but you're paying them more. And that's a massive hit on the income statement. And they're not necessarily working harder than they were pre-COVID, because now I think our expectations as business owners and consumers have calmed down a little bit, because we depend on these workers to come into work and serve us, right? If we want to go to a restaurant, etc. I noticed that as a consumer and an observer. So yes, everything is it's harder to make profit in many of these sectors, and I think that's echoed from Chris's comments as well. Michael, thank you so much for sharing with us, and I will be sharing your comments and contact information. Anything else before I move on with the?
I'll just leave it at this one thing. Yep. A lot of people ask me, how I was able to meet with all of these elected officials all the time, because I would host Zoom calls just like this, and I'd have 100 small business owners on the calls. And I will tell everybody, it's a little old school, but I held what I called the 3P principle. You had to be productive, you had to be professional, and you had to be polite if you wanted to join. And if you weren't, I would ask you to, I wouldn't ask, I just remove you from the Zoom call. And to everybody here, I'll tell you, they knew the rules: professional, productive, and polite. Out of 50 calls with over 100 people on Zoom, I never had one issue.
That's amazing.
And people were always engaged. So whenever you're doing in life, just take those 3 principles: be productive, be professional, polite. Everybody will want to help you.
Love it. Love it. And I love the fact that you're using P's, because my first name's Patrick.
Yeah,
So,
that's why I like that
too. I like that too.
That's why I did it.
Okay.
And the professor.
And professor as well. A lot of P's there. Thanks again, Mike. So no, this is fantastic. And again, I'm going to share, with your permission, I'm going to share your information with the guests as well, and they can reach out to both of you. And thank you so much for attending again and adding a bit of that context, that real in the field context that our college really strives and adds to our unique value proposition to our students. So thanks for demonstrating that. Moving on to the core areas as well, like wrapping up our competitiveness, and I'm going to kind of speed through a few of these stats just so that we can get to the finish line. I'm looking at the time as well. And impacts on the pandemic for overall competitiveness. It does remain an open question. If you look at the hours worked in Canadian businesses, they've actually rebounded faster than our actual real output. So that becomes a bit of a question. For example, our costs, our unit labor costs in a business sector measures the payments to labor required to produce a unit of output. And this, I think, ties in well with our conversations here. They're up 6% year over year over the period of the fourth quarter of 2021. As well, on top of that, non-residential businesses investment has been slower. So that's an important driver of productivity and wage growth. So, for example, investment in machinery, equipment, were still lower than pre-pandemic levels. And businesses business spending on research and development has scaled back, 11% lower than pre-pandemic levels during this period. Again, we're kind of going back in time. So we have to wonder, as well, as a point from the report, is investment in digital technology. I mean, we're all here collaborating digitally, and the longer term impacts of working from home, which will be another topic I bring up in a bit. They're going to be important factors in affecting our business competitiveness. But this is a bit of a concern, and I'll need my economists in the room later to walk me through those formulas. But I thought this was quite interesting, and it does make sense. So moving forward, affordability, will worsen due to high inflation and modest wage gains as it relates, for averages. It's still not keeping up with inflation and cost of living. Financial barriers to home ownership here in Canada is in the headlines, having lasting impacts on social and economic mobility. Again, high contact business sectors, they're facing continued uncertainty as input costs rise, as mentioned, and vacancies remain near record levels. So they can't find good people unless you're running Koichi and on Somerset. You can keep your employees, but your friends are really having a hard time, your competitors. And again, would digitalization of working from home lead to more permanent increases in business productivity? This is a big talk in our business community. Our downtown cores right now are empty. We're not going into the office as much as we used to. The 4-day work week is a big topic as well. So we are working from home more. This is creating positives, I think, for the triple protected employees' personal lives. However, negatives, I forget the economic term, the relationship of the relationship or the indirect impact. Sorry?
Phillips curve or something?
Anyway, it's not the one I was thinking about, but it's probably in that area. So, so when we look at a bit on work engagement, another really great, really nice report from Future Skills Canada Center Government in Canada looked at a list of trends emerging, weak, mature trends. Here's a bit of a list of trends that we can look at to try to, stay ahead of issues that are impact the motivation of our workforce and how we set up our business models, for that matter. So there's about 22 trends, or sorry, about more than that, I believe. There's quite a few trends here, but I did want to again narrow it down for just the focus of our talk as it relates to ones that did stand out, and open to debate this down the road with anybody. And I've had the reference to the report, and those 4 trends. And I want everybody to pay attention now, because there may or may not be a little quiz here coming up. Okay, I'm going to give you a bit of a hint. So permanent work, remote work is definitely a core trend, and that is still emerging. So this is creating a shift in global workforces, implications perhaps for taxing, tax implications, growth in services that support working like this. I mean, the fact that we're together, from Mexico, from Canada, Japan, the technology is allowing us to do this, and we seem to be getting more and more used to it. So this is going to continue to evolve. There could be growth as well, though, in mental health related services. So new business opportunities to affect those burnouts or social isolation that is happening with being behind a screen all day. I mean, if we're behind a screen, we're not chatting in the hallway, right? We're probably working more, like the other graph said, but we're not necessarily putting enough output out there, right? So we need to be careful with that focus area. So the other trend that I found was interesting was a degrowth movement, it's called. And this is going against our capitalistic nature in North America, as well as Japan. There's more of a demand for workers with expertise in environmental, social, and corporate governance strategies. So these are, working for the good of the community, not just for profit. I mean, this is not a new one. However, it is working against our profit motive. Reduced consumption in consumers, focus on minimalism, may result in reduced demand for retail and hospitality industries, which is an interesting one to keep an eye on. Natural sources of wealth could transition from selling resources and physical products to greater emphasis on IP, intellectual property. So I think we're seeing that with technology, digitalization, etc. So there's a degrowth movement here. Workers first is the next one. So that is a decreasing or diminished luxury class, could result in a reduced demand for high-end goods, services, and real estate. There's always going to be demand for this, but I think we're looking at averages and growth of that sector. Wealth distribution policies could provoke high net worth individuals to leave our country, potentially leading to a brain drain or loss of talent. So the establishment of minimum standards for gig workers. So these are non-traditional workers that, maybe deliver the food as a part-time job for Uber, as well as work a full-time job, maybe in the Amazon warehouse or whatever, or maybe an office job. So these are, there's going to be more and more pressure from government or on government to create safer work environments for gig economy workers, which is a growing trend here in Canada. Conversely, unionization pressure may incentivize large gig work employers like Uber to reduce or eliminate operations in Canada. So these are things that we're kind of looking at. And then as the last but not least, is tech to the rescue. It's not a new trend, but companies may need to attract talent capable of onboarding, engaging with new automation. Some jobs are going to continue to disappear. Other jobs could change, and then new jobs will emerge that leverage and complement this automation related applications. There's a big one that we are in the middle of. Growth in advanced manufacturing and robotics may require high skilled talent. I think this is almost a mature trend where we are, almost, I feel like we're behind in our college system actually addressing this one. So these are the 4 that I wanted to focus on. Okay, I'm going to wrap up our presentation with, and I'm hoping we all contribute, so don't leave yet.
But I mean, bi-directional and really engaging, and I really enjoyed it. Although I was not the top, performer in the last part of your. Anyway, yeah. No,
Thank you,
excuse,
and I just want to thank my colleagues as well, Chris Castillo,
sure.
and
Thank
Michael
you very
Wood,
much. Yes,
for
we
joining me
learned
tonight.
greatly
Sorry.
From Professors Chris Castillo and Michael Wood, and also the assistant, Miss Kathy, right?
Kiati
Thank you so
Garg
much.
is assisting
Yeah.
tonight too. So thank you, Kiati.
Yes. Yeah,
So are there any questions, or
Sure.
Hikari, do you
Right.
want to?
Okay.
What would be
So
your
maybe I
next,
will, okay. So I will try to, moderate, right? So
Okay,
thank you so much,
sure.
Professor Patrick Charlton, for your really insightful, bi-directional, interactive type of, lecture. Yeah, and then, new ideas came up, and then value system might be changing, but the, necessity is the mother of invention and innovation, maybe entrepreneurship, and so something new might still be, happening, might still, come out, out of, this Canadian context. Although of course you mentioned this, maybe I don't know if the phrase is good. I mean, stagflation, right? The coexistence of business stagnation and inflation. So maybe some kind of a stagflation is taking place in Canada, but still, there's some positive things coming up, I hope, but because of that COVID incidents, we are having this kind of a innovative type of discussion, right, across the the Pacific Ocean, and so something positive, definitely, for sure. Anyway, well, thank you so much, and then I would like to, at this point, invite my colleague and head of our research project, Professor Jiro Mizushima, for his remarks and comments and questions. And then followed by that session, that part, I would like to represent, Professor Masaya Kobayashi's role, and then make some kind of a comment. Yeah, so that will follow. So Professor Mizushima, please. Thank you very much.
Oh, how do you hear me? Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you for your lecture, Professor Patrick Chato, and thank you for joining us, Chris Castillo and Michael Wood. So this is truly engagement of lecture, and it seems to me that it is a team lecture because Professor Charlton plus
Yes.
Chris Castillo and Michael Wood, 3 professors we have at the same time, and we got various viewpoints from 3 persons, and it was quite insightful and quite practical information we could get. Now I have some comments, and I'm a political scientist, and let me share the screen.
Sure.
One moment, please. Oh, here. Oh, now I have a small screen. So let's start here. Slideshow from the start. Okay. Oh, now you hear my screen, but it is only a couple of slides. I'm a political scientist, and one of my subjects is work welfare and politics. And I'm especially interested in the welfare state reform and labor relations, including work and life balance policy. And therefore, I am particularly interested in the theme work engagement, because work and life balance policy is quite necessary to promote work engagement. And as for engagement, it is quite interesting, important as for a political science, because engagement of citizens in the politics, so-called civic engagement, is quite vital to the functioning of democracy. And also, work engagement is an essential factor for the economy. So work engagement and civic engagement, there are the two pillars of contemporary politics and economy, I think. It was quite interesting to hear about the work by Michael Wood. It is truly a civic engagement. In this sense, engagement is truly our central theme today. Now, 1 week ago, when I thought about my comment for today, it is quite a coincidence, but I have found a newly published report by Gallup. It is a quite interesting report, namely the state of the global workforce in 2023. This report is about the work engagement. It is about the latest development among the employees in the world after the pandemic. So it might help our understanding of the conditions of work engagement, especially from the comparative viewpoint. Employee engagement is essential for performance outcomes and to well-being of employees. Therefore, I would like to share the main points of this report. The first and important message of this report is, in general, the work engagement is rising recently in the world. The percentage of engaged employees globally rose steadily in the latest 10 years. In 2022, the percentage of engaged full and part-time employees is 23%. But if we look into the details, we can find many interesting results, which are sometimes contrary to our assumptions. During the pandemics, we experienced a large scale of remote work, as Professor Charlton indicated. So we would like to know the impact of remote work on the engagement of employees. According to the report of Gallup, exclusively remote employees are more engaged than fully on-site and hybrid employees. It might mean that work remotely makes you more engaged at work. We could say that Corona pandemic has had some positive impact on the workplace by forcing other new style of work than before. But at the same time, it has different impacts, as Professor Charlton pointed out today. As you know, people who can do remote work are almost white collar and triple protected workers. But anyway, remote work itself has some positive effect. And the second interesting finding is the difference between the regions. In which part of the world are people more engaged than other regions? According to the survey, regions with the highest levels of employee engagement are South Asia, the United States and Canada, and Latin America and the Caribbean. All of them are higher than 30%. On the contrary, the European region has the lowest employee engagement. It's only 13%. And also in East Asia, employee engagement is quite low, namely 70%. So in both sides of the Pacific, we see quite different pattern. In the meantime, we can see some negative trend among employees, which has close relationship with well-being of employees. These 10 years, the employee stress has also increased. Stress would cause physical and mental problems with negative impact on well-being. It means that we have to do more to cope with growing stress of employees in the age of globalization and automatization and rapid change. But here too, we see remarkable differences among regions. It is interesting to see that in the United States and Canada, today's hot topic, Canada, 52% of workers reported stress a lot of the day, while the stress among the European employee is somewhat low, namely 39%. So the picture here shows a clear contrast. High engagement with high stress in United States and Canada, and low engagement with low stress in Europe. It seems from these trends in Western countries, the high work engagement might produce more stress among employees. How high engagement and more stress, it seems, it could be an explanation. But the things are not so simple. If we look into the situation in East Asia, we see another pattern. In East Asia, the engagement is low, as I mentioned, but the stress is quite high, namely 52%. So in East Asia, high stress and low engagement, that is quite different from Europe and Northern America. So the impact of remote work on stress is quite interesting. Exclusively remote and hybrid employees who show more engagement than those working on site report higher stress. It might be a result that if we work remotely, you must combine work and private life, which is not an easy task. So, my last comment. So I would like to know your opinion about the regional difference of engagement and stress. And is it possible to think of a best combination? And about remote work, how can you promote engagement and at the same time diminish stress? So this is truly a contemporary question. Thank you for your lecture.
Right, thank you so much, Professor Mizushima. So, Professor Patrick Charlton, if there is anything you could comment on at this point in time, please.
Thank you so much for your lecture on work engagement. I found it very fascinating, and it does complement some of the topics we discussed in the presentation prior. And what I found really interesting is the relationship, Professor, with regards to the regions of high engagement. I think it was high engagement and also high stress. And I couldn't help think about the cultural aspects too of the regions, the cultural and I guess ideologies towards work in general. These are things I thought of. I know, a big topic in our daily lives, with my colleagues is, there's a lot of benefits to our job in general, just because we can work from home pre-COVID. I mean, pre-COVID, we were working remote, in a sense. We just have to go into class for our classes, but for a lot of our work can be done off-site. So, we have a different context. However, I know that in the years, the restriction years, where we could not go into the campus at all, there was definitely a positive financial savings from lower cost of transport, clothing, lunches, coffees, things like that. So I remember sharing a Globe and Mail article on the impact of remote work and the cost savings associated with it, related to it was like getting a big raise. And I'll find that article and get the formula again. But it was kind of an interesting way to look at it. So I think from what causes stress, a lot has to come down to incentives. Are you earning in a manner that is conducive to your lifestyle? So again, that may lead to that work engagement, but as well, the socialization aspect of your work is very important. So I do see benefits as well from the hybrid perspective. Having the choice to go into the office is quite nice. Being told to go into the office is probably not working very well with some of the people I speak to, and I know in we live in a big government town. So the primary employer is the federal government. We work in a federal type of work, a governmental type of work as well. We are, so I can speak for government workers. They're mandated to go back to the office at least 3 days a week. And even that is creating a lot of stress with them and affecting their work engagement. So I think that leads well to your research as well, where yes, remote workers in that context would probably be happier and more engaged working strictly remote. I think we're seeing that as a perfect example in our city right now, in Ottawa, where government workers are not necessarily happy to have to go in on specific days, which a lot of their departments are mandating. So again, there's that loss of freedom that I think would probably lead to those engagement levels going down, or negative engagement, I guess, is maybe the way to look at it. So that would be my comment there.
Thank you so much, Professor. Yeah, and then so we was hoping to have our colleague Professor Masaya Kobayashi, but as I might have mentioned, he's now very much feverish, and so I wish to speak on his behalf. So let me just share the screen. This is just an email conversation I had with him, and then just a very quick summary translation into English, Japanese and then English. So comments from Professor Masaya Kobayashi, maybe 2-3 minutes. Okay, then if you could respond, Professor Charlton. Okay, so
Sure.
This one, all right. So thank you so much. We could, I could clearly get the overall picture of the context, COVID-related context in Canada, and I cordially appreciate your presentation today. Then, health and business deterioration, mental health as well in Japan too. In our forthcoming book, clickable here, this point is also indicated. Oh, by the way, this PowerPoint file is in the chat line already. So please, everyone, download the PowerPoint file, Professor Masaya Kobayashi's, comments and questions with some, just a brief, translation. Okay, so this is bullet point number 2.
Great,
and
thank
then
you.
I could move to the third page. Okay, and then maybe larger government support in Canada than in Japan. So without such, governmental support, the damage, the negative, damage might be bigger in Canada, right? So that's his comment. Of course, in Japan, in food services, industry is experienced as in the same thing, but overall, the impact might not be so big here in Japan. What's your comment and idea? And then the second bullet point on this slide is, rapid expansion of remote work and online work, here in Japan as well. Yes, of course, statistical analysis needs to follow, but yes, we wish to echo. And then in Japan, negative impact on equality, health, including physical and mental, employment stability, income and assets, subjective well-being also deteriorated here in Japan. And then the concept of triple protected job is a novel and really impressive one. Here in Japan too, we have the former two factors at least. I will check more on this here in Japan. And then well-being, or WB, in our survey in Japan deteriorated for some people, but increased for others to some extent. Work from home people, like category people, might be, have experienced, a positive well-being. An increase of well-being. In a sense, well-being of the people in the triple protected job increase and polarization might have happened as a result. Then the existing gap widened this is a possibility, maybe here in Japan as well. And then the last, point, your last point about, digitalization and then remote work and their impacts into the future. I'm really interested in these points. So in our research here in Japan under COVID, our sense of value or value system, mental value system changed in two senses. First is in pursuit of security or safety and then second, in pursuit of more mental or psychological richness or enriching type. So these two, the latter is noteworthy. Any similarity or commonality in Canada? So these are basically the rough, sketch of, what Professor Kobayashi might have asked, wanted to ask you. Yeah, thank you so much. And then there is a PowerPoint file. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that too. And I have downloaded it and happy to continue our conversation even after the seminar. I think all these ideas shared are worth continuing to explore as we, one of the comments from my colleagues was, speaking to our students, how do we set them up for the future? And I often come to a point and I think, what I maybe said 2 or 3 years ago is very different than what I'm saying now. And because we are living through such a new environment than ever before. It's so historic, and it's just changing, how we need to look at business, society. So we are definitely living in a very, very crucial period in our history from many different perspectives. So from the work perspective, I appreciate the comments on with regards to, yes, remote work has become definitely the number one topic for all firms from many different perspectives. We're a tech town. We had one of our biggest by market value company, the name's Shopify. They decided to seize all office locations. They sold all of their buildings, most of them, and went full remote, 100% remote. And that was a big employer that decided to make that first step here in Ottawa, or a major employer making that big step to take advantage of the financial savings of not having to invest in office space for employees and to leverage the technology and the fact that they can still produce with their employees working out of their houses. Our house, even though we're back to work now, I'm speaking for myself. I work for a college. My wife works for the federal government, but we're still working more from our homes than we ever done pre-COVID. And when I know about Michael or Chris, when you walk on campus, it's definitely not as busy as it was pre-COVID. I don't see many colleagues anymore. So we have changed our habits and our lifestyle. And I think one of the comments also came up with your shared comments was around mental health is a big concern. More investment is being made in addressing mental health, where it used to be a taboo. We would never speak about it. Back in years past, it was just an embarrassment, and we would just struggle. But now it's common practice to speak openly about if you're having issues and challenges that way, and seek help. And there's more investment and less stigma against that, and I think that will continue and have to continue to progress as we go through challenging change in our society. So the other one too, and I have to look back at the PowerPoint, was there was the remote work, and then the mental health was a theme, a change in how we look at business and consumption. I think we'll start to continue to see changes there. And also, I didn't address this in my presentation, but there is a gap between the haves and the have-nots. So the haves are the triple protected workers that have a very different experience than, let's say, workers that have to be in a frontline contact field-based type of work. So if there is a pandemic, another one, or something like that of that nature, they have nowhere to go. And so what we're seeing in our city centers is, an increase in homelessness. It's become a bit more dangerous in our major cities. Security has not kind of caught up to managing people kind of getting back into city centers, visiting restaurants, etc., where there's a bit more conflict we're seeing as safety concerns in major city centers in Canada, I'm driving by areas in my local area where we are seeing more people live in tent cities, like you hear of in San Francisco, and major city centers in the States. So that is also here in Canada it's more apparent. So I think the divide has become wider and wider, and I think that the COVID exacerbated that with the restrictions and the loss of that social construct in our society.
Thank you so much. Okay, so Professor Kobayashi has been listening these.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us again.
Okay, I will talk a bit, perhaps I can. And thank you for your excellent presentation. And two other speakers are also grateful for their presence, because their speech influenced my understanding of COVID-19's impact, especially, for example, Michael's presentation is very informative of a political dimension of this event. And so my questions was translated to Professor Ishido, and so I was very grateful for your answer. And in addition, I study psychology, especially positive political psychology. From that angle, the word work engagement is very important for me, because the usage of work engagements is different from yours. The word work engagement means positive style of working, which was measured by three dimensions such as vigor and devotion and so on. So we measure work engagement in various entrepreneurs. And so my understanding of the future world, especially of the next society, was influenced by our measuring. And so positive work will emerge from this great shift towards digitalization and remote work. That's my background of my comments. Thank you for your presentation. And the reason why I am the highest score, I enjoy your
That's right. The
quiz.
game. You won the game.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. The
excellent.
reason is that I look at your slides carefully for my comments. Thank you very much.
I'll send you your prize. It might take a while. It's gonna
All
get.
right, thanks very
I'm
much.
gonna use regular mail.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Doctor, and thank you again for your comments. And I remember the other thought I had is working from home and mixing your pleasure and work, and it becomes work is not separated anymore from your family work, from your family life. So
That's
that
very
is
important.
causing some interesting challenges, and maybe some positive, some negative ones are coming out of that, right?
There's a good example. I was got sick, and my wife got sick because we are so I have to care for my children and wife with myself. So I have to go sometimes outside, sometimes inside. That's a very good example for the work and life. Thanks very much.
Yeah, case in point, definitely. And I think Michael had to go take care of a little baby as well that was crying. He had to get up and go.
That's the point.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Oh, there you go. You got it on the camera.
Yeah, and then so we still have 18 minutes, and then using this precious 18 minutes, we have Professor Kawase and also Dr. Cho Jam. Maybe if you have, and then of course the participant from Mexico and elsewhere. So let's have this Q&A session. So please, make your intervention. So Professor Kawase, are you here?
Yes. Do you hear me?
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So thank you very much, Professor Charlton. Thank you very much for your inspiring lecture. I am Takayuki Kawase, teaching philosophy of law in Chiba University. So I am legal philosopher. And today I have some remarks about COVID issues. So after talking something about that, I'd like to ask some questions to Professor Charlton. I think many people, especially in Japan, say COVID pandemic has brought about some irreplaceable changes to our society. And according to this idea, COVID has changed our society in some essential ways. And we cannot go back to the previous way of life. But I have slightly different opinions about that. I think COVID certainly changed our perspective. By perspective, I mean our way of thinking. But it never changed the reality itself. For example, it never changed our human natures or the essential structures of our society or our basic values. So even if we find something new during pandemic, I think we just uncover something being hidden previously. So we just discover something we ignored previously. For example, some people say COVID makes the gender gap in Japan, so gender gap unfairness worse and worse. But in my opinion, the gender gap issues has been existing and might be getting worse by other reasons as well. So even if COVID makes gender, for example, gender gaps worse, it may be just a trigger, I think. So just a trigger which is just accelerating the unfair social structures that has been existing for a long time, or it is just a trigger that makes us aware to such issues. So I think COVID-19 is a very, very good chance to discover our social unfairness, which has existed long time, but still we haven't taken care enough. So this is my personal opinion or impression about the COVID issue. And next, this is the questions to Professor Charlton. My question is that, is COVID still a serious issue in Canadian economics? For example, in the labor market, or in another way, do people still care COVID? So I think the word people is too big. So for example, do workers still care COVID? Do business owners still care COVID? Or do stockholders still care COVID? So the point of my question is that who cares the COVID issue the most or the least? Probably the medical doctors cares COVID a lot, but this is just this is very natural. But who cares the COVID the most or the least among business sectors? So this is my question. So for who the COVID issue is the most important? So this is my question. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thank
no, it's
you
a
very
great
much.
question, and yeah, and thank you for asking, and thank you for your comments. It actually, from part of my observation, research, and what we're experiencing in Canada, back to your gender gap comment, it was an interesting one because from my research and what we've been observing is women have been disproportionately affected across industries with COVID due to ones with families. They just end up being the ones that seem to take on that homeschooling type role, which has affected some of their abilities to work and be available for opportunities in the workplace. So it is a little bit of a setback we're noticing with in some of the research and some of the observations. So it's definitely a great comment, and I'm happy. The reference report that I use for the research actually has a section called Gender Equality Rollback. So you would be interested to read that from just based on that comment and the potential labor market implications. There may be continued barriers to workplace inclusion. Employers may become less transparent about salary. So we may go back a bit in the progress that has been made in narrowing that gap. Now and again, very sector dependent. I know in our college, for example, they're very, very women are very well positioned for opportunities at the college for the most part, for many executive roles, and the women are running those roles and functions from the administrative perspective, and as well faculty perspective. So that's the gender one. The other question was, what are the industries that are most kind of COVID focused still? I mean, for the most part, we are not wearing masks anymore, like as a population. There's a few, but it's more rare now. It's not as common. And I just tend to go to the common, again, it's our friends in the accommodations sector, the ones where you have high contact are the ones that are still being very careful. There's always, where pre-COVID, you never saw a, what do you call it? The
sanitizer.
Yeah, the sanitizer gel, but there's always a bottle at any restaurant, most restaurants still. I've noticed cleaning procedures have come up. I think people just expect it now from a psychological perspective. I think it's smart that businesses are continuing to treat their sanitation procedures aligned with what customers have learned to expect through COVID because they've been so hard hit. So that would be my answer. I haven't done too much research on it. I don't know if Mike or Chris have any comments around what industry sector would be most, COVID minded still, I guess, from a restriction perspective and sanitation perspective. Mike?
I just think that if we look at various healthcare, different sectors in healthcare, we'll still see people wearing more masks. I know that the hospitals still, some are requiring masks, but you're right, Patrick, in terms of the general
Dentists.
retail, restaurant, mass business for small business, we're not seeing any more. We are seeing the hand sanitizer. There's one at the gas station today when I walked in, sitting on the counter. So, I think that's part of it, but at the end of the day, if people would like to wear a mask, I have no problem with it. Last semester at the college, actually the fall and January semesters, I had one student. I would never recognize her without a mask because she wore it every single day in class.
Yeah.
And that's her prerogative. And, everybody knew that was her choice and they couldn't say anything. So, I just, protect people's right to whatever makes them feel most comfortable after what we've just been.
Yeah.
Thank you
Yeah.
very much. I think
Thank you.
the wearing mask issue is, I think, heavily cultural kind of thing. So
I think so.
in Japan, I think half of our students still wearing masks, but
Still wear
I think
masks.
the sanitary gel is, I think, basically same in Japan. So I think it's
from a cultural perspective, I think you're bang on. Actually, when you just said that, I remember I was just in Chinatown and went into a grocery store. Everybody was wearing a mask and gloves. And we're not, as customers. Most of us aren't wearing it, and so we're like, do they know something we don't? But I think it's more of a habit or cultural. Yeah, correct. Yeah.
I think most of Japanese people take the mask off when we travel abroad. So this is not the matter of the Japanese culture, but
Yes.
what's that?
Yeah.
That's very strange.
Societal pressures.
Yeah. When in Rome, do as the Romans do.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, thank you very much. So we have actually maybe one or two more, commentators, right? For example, Dr. Zhang from China, if you're here, and then maybe another doctor, newly doctorated from Mexico, right? Dr. Alfonso Torero. So if we could have, brief comments or questions, from both of you, if you're here.
Yes, of course.
Okay, so new doctor, congratulations, first of all, and then, please go ahead. Please.
Thank you very much. Okay, well, thank you, Professor Charlton and the other professors for your presentations. So I have a question related to business. Did you find a tendency in organizations offering face-to-face services that survived the COVID-19 crisis, for example, that changed their selling strategies, incorporated new technologies, merged with other organizations or other activities they incorporated? This is the first one. And the other one, well, I was reflecting about the differences that we have. Like, we are countries in the North American sector of the North American continent, but Mexican situation during the COVID is very different from the Canadian one. Like, maybe in other developed countries you have similar phenomena, but here there were very low subsidies for organizations, citizens, or citizens. So I was thinking, and my question more about social comparison is, was the tendency of less educated citizens working in face-to-face activities also seen in other statistics? For instance, do you know if during the COVID pandemic crisis there was a group of legal and illegal immigrants working in face-to-face activities? If you found these kind of differences in types of citizens in the different economic sectors, has they changed after the COVID-19 crisis? Thank you
so much. Thank you so much. So, Professor, thank you so much, Dr. Alfonso Torreiro, for your comment. And then, okay, we have one more, commentator. So if we could already invite her, and for then, you know, if Professor Charlton could respond to both. Yeah. So,
sure. Yeah, I'm gonna write down the Alfonso.
Sorry. Okay.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, no problem.
Okay.
I got him.
So Dr. Zhang, please.
Yeah. Hi, Dr. Zhang.
Yes, thank you for your presentation, Professor Patrick. And I have one question. Actually, I have two, but they have no time. So let me just ask you one question. And on your PPT page 10, and you showing us an employment route by the population. And I saw that the Black population group has a higher route than the other group. So how do you think the situation, and does there any unfair between the different population group on the employment division in Canada, or it is just happened on the time of pandemic? Yes, this is my questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Zhang. So Professor Charlton, please.
Yes. Okay. No, these are great questions, and thank you for bringing them up. I'm going to go back to Dr. Torreiro's question about change in businesses. Yes. A lot of businesses have changed the way they function now. I think the pandemic has taught us all, just as citizens, as workers, different, leaner ways of living, not spending. Maybe I know I watch what I spend. I spend differently as a consumer. Still to this day, my habits of purchasing that lunch, coffee at these restaurants, have gone dramatically down, and due to the fact that for 2 years I wasn't doing it. So, there's a double-edged sword there. Obviously, it's affecting those businesses. So let's look at the business now. So the coffee shop that used to get my business, well, you know what? The coffee shop is probably there's not as many of them. We used to have a coffee shop every corner, not so much anymore. So I know for sure a lot of big franchises have shrunk down their footprint. They've relooked at their locations. Chris Castillo, he gave us some examples of how they pivoted towards takeout only, and leveraged digitization tools like Square instead of Uber, to save on that cost perspective going to Uber. So these are changes that, just a few examples. I mean, I walked by, speaking of coffee, I walked by a fully automated coffee stall. It was robots making coffee. I didn't try it, but that was like, is that the future? So I think it's less footprint in general, less footprint, so less square footage. So we're seeing smaller stores and leveraging technology to get maybe the product to the customer. I know retail it's more of a smaller footprint, touch, feel, experience, and then maybe purchase later on their app and get it delivered to their house. So that is becoming more and more a kind of a cost, more efficient way to do business. So I think, so just like a quick answer there. And then the other question was towards foreign workers. coming in? I think that was the question. Are we seeing more? I'm not sure if there was something to do with foreign workers, and I think I forgot the gist of it, but I think that's what it was. Dr. Torero, can you expand on that?
Yes.
I know we're going overtime. Is that okay?
Yeah. Sorry.
5 more minutes? Yeah, we'll do 5 more minutes.
5 minutes. Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Okay.
I will try to be very quick. Like you spoke that there was a tendency of less educated people working in face-to-face activities during the pandemic. So
Okay.
I was thinking,
so there was the relationship.
I was thinking,
okay.
yep. Mhm.
Yeah, so that relationship is just the manner of our economy in a knowledge-based economy where most of our higher paid work is attributed to, or it connects with workers that are higher skilled from a knowledge perspective. So the lower paid work is available for workers that don't have the knowledge skills to get the higher paid work, obviously. So that's the relationship there. Was that the question?
Not exactly. It's
okay.
I was thinking, yeah, I understand that relationship is like, I wanted to know if like the social gap grew in many ways, right? So, for example, in the case of illegal and legal immigrants, do they also participated more in face-to-face activities, for example? And if so, how is, after the COVID crisis, how is the different economic distribution of workers? Like, are more workers in the tertiary sector with these characteristics, or has the distribution of workers changed?
As it relates to immigration? Is that the question?
For example,
to new entrants, new immigrants? Yeah, I think there's a problem there for Canada. I think there's a few things we could talk about with immigration, and one is the education level of new immigrants to Canada may not align with our accredited system, where many well-educated new immigrants to Canada end up in high contact work because they can't get the triple protected jobs because our systems are set up to only recognize specific credentials. That's a big problem. With many of our Uber drivers are really well educated, or taxi drivers are very well educated, doctorates, engineers, but they cannot get the work in Canada because it would take them 5 more years to get accredited in our system. So that's a big problem, and has been. I don't know how COVID has either exacerbated that. I'm not sure. I'd have to look into that and research that relationship.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, and happy to continue conversations after this this class. I can leave my my email in the chat line. Happy to hear from anybody, or Dr. Ishido, you can share my email. I can leave I'll write my my email in the Zoom chat line. And doctors, so Doctors Zhang, you had a question with regards to the chart with the distribution of the opportunity. So that was pulled from Statistics Canada, and that was just some research that I pulled from a survey done with regards to race and employment during that time. And yes, there was a higher uptake of employment opportunities for that specific race. I don't know, to be quite frank, why that was much higher. I have some ideas just based on maybe immigration as well. I mean, I noticed just locally, there's more of an African population moving into Canada. And I think that there's some alignment there with that if I had to, but I would have to back that up with some proof there. So, but that's a great question, and I'm happy to follow up with you on that.
Yeah,
Dr.
thank you
Ishido?
very- Yeah. Thank you very much. Okay, Professor Charlton, and then your, excellent teammates for your team
Yes, thank you.
lecturing. Yes, thank you so much. Our
my
time is
email.
already up, so we just wanted to, appreciate you by clapping our hands, right?
Thank
Okay,
you so
of
much.
course.
This
Oh,
was
thank you
a
so
lot
much
of
for
fun.
joining me. Yeah.
Thanks for having
and so
me.
Thank you
I'm
so
gonna-
much. And then, this time it was, an online occasion, but as you might have mentioned, please come over to Chiba in Japan. Yeah.
Yes. We have to get our friend in our international center to send me
Yeah.
over.
Yeah. And
We're going to bring Chris and Michael with me too.
Yeah, that's a good idea. And then also we're, in the process of, in the middle of applying for a government in the big scale research grant. So if that will be
Excellent.
going to be approved, then, we can officially invite you all. Something
Fantastic,
like
fantastic.
that. Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you very
well,
much.
I
Okay, so
will-
time is up. And so,
Thanks again for
and then
having
thank you
me.
so much for the texting. Yeah,
I put my
really-
email in the Zoom line, so feel free to send me an email. If anybody wants to connect afterwards, happy to discuss any questions. Oh, thank you, Michael, for putting your information in. Chris, can you put your email in
Yeah,
there
and
too?
also-
or contact? That would be great.
Thank you so much. And then Mr. Taichi Sato has kindly put in his comment. Yeah. So
Okay.
if you could just, could read this part or copy it and then paste it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Before you leave.
Careful
Yeah. Thank you so
situation,
much
first
for
learn
this. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But time is up, and so I will have to make
Yeah.
a closing. So just briefly, thank you so much. We wish to close this session, but as obviously, the issues have just come up. So we should definitely keep thinking collaboratively. So let's keep in touch academically as well as practically. All right.
Yeah, no, excellent. Thank you so much for again for hosting and for inviting us to be part of this, Professor Ishido. And thank you everybody
so
for your
much.
participation.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so
very
much.
much.
It's an honor.
Okay,
Thank you.
Yeah, so that's it for tonight, today, this morning, this afternoon, tonight. Okay, and then have a nice time, everyone, and then let's stay in touch then. So
Arigato.
thank you so much. I will
Thank you.
email you, Professor Charlton, okay? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Right.
Take care, everybody. Have a good
Okay, so
night.
thank you
Good
so much
day.
for the team
See you again.
teaching collaborators. ありがとうございました. Thank you so much. Okay, that close. Yeah, that's the end of this session.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, thank you so much. We really enjoyed.